Shabbat Shalom. Hi, Mark. Hi, Becca. Good to see you. Beth. Hi. Suan. Asher Chaim. I love your bow tie. How
Good
you
morning,
dress up.
Rob.
Good morning. You dress up for Shabbat even though you're on Zoom and at home. It's amazing.
It helps me. It helps me
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, I understand that. Hi, Neil. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom. Hi, Jay. I missed you last week. I think you weren't there, right?
Correct. But belated Yom Huledet Sameach.
It's so weird with Facebook how everybody knows when your birthday is. But thank you, thank you. And I haven't even looked at all the birthday wishes on Facebook, but I will. Hi, Richard. Good to
Good,
see
because
you.
mine are late, and this way I won't feel bad.
No, don't feel bad. Whoever said that, do not feel bad.
I'm guessing this is one of your 54 favorite Torah portions this week.
No. Well, now that it's interesting, it kind of isn't, but now that I've spent some time with it, it kind of is.
It's like all your favorite children.
Yeah. Right. I think I'm a child of Torah rather than the other way around. Nehemiah, shalom, Shabbat shalom. So good to see you. It was good to see people on screen on Yom Kippur. Some people weren't present. Mark, were you there in person? I couldn't tell. I can't hear you.
I was there on Erev, and then the next day I was there on screen.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Hi, Alina. So good to see you. Love seeing you for Torah study. I can't hear you because you're muted. You can unmute yourself if you want to. We're going to start in a minute.
Next to you again.
It was great to sit next to you. Oh my God. That was really amazing. Yeah, it was definitely became part of the experience. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's amazing
Thank
how just
you.
sitting next to somebody like that presence becomes a gift. It really is amazing. Okay. Richard, where are you? I'm curious. Are you on the train? Oh my God, you're on the subway. Oh my God. I love it. Bringing Torah into subway, the New York transit system. I love it. Oh my God. Last week we had Amtrak, and this week, New York subway system. This is really incredible. Hi, Lauren. You look like you're in like a glass house, like a greenhouse.
My kitchen.
Oh,
Shabbat
that's
shalom.
the kitchen? Wow. Wow, Shabbat Shalom. Debbie from Florida.
Asher Koach, Rabbi Diane, on just an amazing, beautiful drash. And I just loved your conversation with Rabbi David.
That was really fun and unexpected. Oh my God. I mean, we knew we were going to do it, but we didn't know what would come out, right? So it was really fun. And I was so relieved that something came out.
It was amazing. Well done.
Good, thank you.
I loved it.
Was
love
it? Is it available on recording?
It is. It is. In fact, it's if you there's an email that went out like with all the highlights, and it's one of the highlights, and it tells you like where to go in terms of time wise into the video. And if you don't have that email, I can send it to you. Just
I loved it, your conversation. And it was in line with what my first teacher told me, that Jonah wasn't a real prophet, he was a parody.
He was a parody.
It was a one more Jonah. Jonah was created as a satire to teach something, and you did it like a satire. I loved it.
Great, great. We'll do a shiur on Jonah one day. But right now, we're going into Ha'azinu, and let's do the blessing over Torah study. Nehemiah, do you want? We're gonna now Noah, if you can bring the slide up. Nehemiah, do you want to read the blessing? Do you want to recite the blessing too?
I would love to. I would love
I would
to.
love to have you.
Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו אלוהיתנו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Amen, amen. So blessed are you, Spirit of the universe, who has commanded us to soak in your words of Torah. And that brings us to this communal study. And I have to say, every week I feel like, we're at Sinai. So we're going to, I'm going to screen share. Let's see, yeah, you have the source sheet. Okay, excellent. I'm going to screen share right now. Host disabled participant screen sharing. No, can you help me with that?
Yep, one moment.
Sure. Just say when. I'll try again.
Go for it.
Okay. You know what? Let's, in terms of getting copies and videos and all that, just write to everybody if you have questions about, wanting to access resources from Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Please send an email to Romemu at support@romemu.org. Okay, let's see. Ha'azinu. Oh, we're not looking at Ha'azinu. Here it is. Okay, so I have. What just happened? Didn't you just see it here and then it disappeared? Let's try again. Second. Okay. So I have, as usual, too many sources on the page. And some of them I'm just going to sort of read from some of them. I'm only going to read a verse or two just to give you a sense of what the overall pattern that the Parsha is laying out. And, just a few words about the Parsha before we dive in. It's a song, it's a poem, it's a beautiful, beautiful, rich, intense, intricate poem. And it's laid out in the Torah scroll like this, right? So there's all this parallelism, if I'm saying that literary term correctly, between one line of poem and another line of the poem. So it's, for instance, Ha'azinu Hashamayim ve'adabra, v'tishma ha'aretz imri pi. So the heavens and the earth, the heavens listen, the heavens listen and I will speak, and the earth will hear as I say my words. That was probably not a perfect translation, but we'll get to that. But in other words, you see how heavens and earth and listening, and a different word for listening in Hebrew, and speaking and a different word for speaking in Hebrew make the two parts of the verse parallel. Okay? All right, so we'll see more of that in a little while, but I wanted to show you that beautiful, beautiful visual. Okay. So now, here's my poetic preamble, which I'm calling it, from an amazing poem by James Merrill, who died in 1995. And it's a long poem about a divorce of his parents, in fact. And he says, always that same old story, Father Time and Mother Earth, a marriage on the rocks. Which is so, so interesting. And the reason, well, I'll say the reason it's interesting in a second. The reason I chose this little excerpt is that what Ha'azinu bears witness to with this beautiful song poem is Israel's pattern, Israel's cycle, right? The pattern of sort of God caring for them and being, sort of vulnerable and understanding, their dependence on God, to forgetting and becoming complacent and worshiping other gods, right? There's that link being made between forgetting God and complacency and worshiping other gods, and then being punished, right? And the Torah is here to remind them of this pattern, and Torah is kind of the alternative to the pattern, And, at this stage and age of my life, I'm extremely cognizant of my patterns. And I always have this fantasy like, if I just do this, I'll be out of my patterns. If I just do this, I just do that. But, now I'm wise enough, I think, to know that the patterns are there and there all are alternatives. And I'm going to go back and forth. It's not exactly that I'm going to be redeemed from my parents. Ooh, interesting Freudian slip here. Redeemed from my patterns. This is a very appropriate theme for coming off of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Because do we really erase our sins? Do we really get rid of our sins? Or is it something else? So that's the bigger question here. Okay, so we're going to dive in with last week's Parsha. Just to give you some background on what this song is, and I think we looked at actually some of this last week, to frame the song, because the Torah is really clear here of the function of the song. Oh, I put in all these titles for each text. Twice I did this and they disappear. Oh well. Oh well, sorry about that. But anyway, this is last week's Parsha, and it's again, lays out the purpose of the poem song, which we discussed a little bit last week. Let's see, I don't want to, okay, let's see. Okay, I'll just start reading. I don't know if we're going to look at the whole piece here because it's long. Okay, so when I bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey that I promised on oath to their fathers, and they eat their fill and grow fat and turn to other gods and serve them, spurning me and breaking my covenant. So that's it in a nutshell, right? Ki avienu el ha'adama asher nishpati la'avotav. So I'm going to bring them into this, beautiful land that I promised to their forefathers, right? Okay, zavat chalav udvash, flowing with milk and honey, v'achal v'sava v'dashen, and they eat their fill and grow fat. Now let's be careful with this word fat. I think it's a stand-in for complacency, right? I don't want to get hung up on the word fat, and I'm not even sure that's a literal translation of that word, because I know it's used in other contexts for fullness. Yeah, let's say fullness. I think that's a little bit better. Ufana el ha'elohim acherim va'avadum v'na'atsuni v'hefer et breiti. Okay, so again, that complacency and then turning to other gods, spurning me and breaking my covenant. So I want to look at a little intertext here that my chavruta, and I don't know if she's here this morning, Rabbi Sharon Cohen-Anisfeld, reminded me of, which is such a explicit explanation of what it is to grow complacent. Okay, so here in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy 8, it says, beware lest your heart grow haughty and you forget the Lord your God, who freed you from the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, right? That God who basically gave you everything, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness. I'm going to skip around a little bit because I just want you to get the images and the essence of this. Parched land with no water in it, who brought forth water from you from the flinty rock. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful image. Who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers had never known, in order to test you by hardships, only to benefit you at the end. And then here's the crux of it. And you say to yourselves, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me. Okay, so in verse Yud Zayin 17, Va'amarta bilvavecha. So you say to yourself, you say in your own heart, Kochi ve'otzem yadi asali et hachayil hazeh. Right, so my own power has, given me this strength, this ability to be kind of a warrior, like a chayal. And then when you say that, the Torah tells us, remember that it is the Lord your God who gives you the power to get wealth and fulfillment of the covenant that God made on oath with your parents, as is still the case. So let's think about that a little bit. I feel like this is incredibly countercultural. Like our whole culture is all about self-confidence and your achievements and your mastery. Here's saying, no, you didn't do it with your own power. This is not your own power. Right, and I think about that often in terms of, class, because, you go to Harvard, not always, but your parents went to Harvard, or you had every resource growing up. You went to the best schools. So what? You got into Harvard? Like, you've been nurtured from the moment you were born to get into Harvard, right? So it's not that there's no achievement, but it's like achievement in perspective. Okay, so now I feel like I might have said some things that are provocative. So I'll open us up to discussion in a minute, but I just want to get to the purpose of the poem. Okay, so we're going back here. So that day Moses wrote down this poem and taught it to the Israelites. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm actually, oh no, I am in the right thing. Sorry. Okay. Um, let's see. I'm sorry, going back to 21. And the many evils and troubles befall them, and then this poem shall confront them as a witness, since it will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. So that's so aspirational, right? That this song, and I guess in a larger sense, this Torah will never be lost from the mouths of their offspring. For I know what plans they are devising, even now, before I bring them into the land that I promised on oath. So it's almost like this trap, this pattern is waiting for them. But that day, Moses wrote down this poem and taught it to the Israelites. And then I'm going down a little bit. Take this book of teaching and place it beside the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and let it remain there as a witness against you. So we talked about that a little bit last week. But again, there's something about this Torah and this song that is a witness, right? Bears witness to our larger patterns and to the ways that we abandon God. Okay, so I think that's the introduction to Ha'azinu. And let's just look at the first few verses. They're just so beautiful. Ha'azinu hashamayim va'adabera. So give ear, O heavens, let me speak. V'tishma ha'aretz imrefi. Let the earth hear the words I utter. Ya'aruf kamatar l'chi tizal katal imrati. And this is like a very old ancient Hebrew. The poetry of the Torah is like the largest, is the sort of the genre of the literature that's most ancient. So may my discourse come down as rain, my speech distill as the dew, like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. Kasi'irim alei desha, uchrivim alei esev. Kishem Adonai ekra havu godel le'Eloheinu. For the name of the Lord I proclaim, give glory to your God. So there's such an sort of a beautiful combination here of these of images that are eternal, like heavens and earth, and then this like the temporal and the daily, right? Like speech, the ephemeral nature of speech and dew, right? That daily dew, which is often compared to Torah. One more thing that I want to get to before I open things up is that my friend and Chavruta Sharon pointed out to me that rocks has a double meaning, right? Always that same old story, Father Time and Mother Earth, a marriage on the rocks. So a marriage that's in trouble, but a marriage also that's, in a sense, on a solid foundation, right? You can read it either way. It's on the rocks. So, okay, so I've said a lot. I'm going to stop my share and take some comments. And remember, please, just so we have time for as many voices as possible, to make your comments concise. Let's see if I don't see any hands yet, but I see something has happened in the chat. And I see Roberta. Go ahead. And then Jay. Jump in, Roberta.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Yeah, something I've never seen before in last week's that you showed us. It's a primer on privilege. And
I love that. Very good, Roberta.
It reminds me of a very painful, I was in a series of conversations during COVID on Zoom about race and the pain of a particular white male friend of mine who was a lifelong committed activist. This man has been arrested 50 times, but for him, he was like, but I worked hard for everything I have. Just the pain of that. And of course, we're all like, you don't see white male privilege, but now I'm getting, wow, what a primer this is for all of us. The privilege that we've been given to live.
Yeah.
Oof. So thank you for this. Very
Yeah, absolutely. And the privilege doesn't wipe out the fact that people work hard to get what they get, but it's just a complicated, right, sort of position to figure out, like the hard work and the privilege and what we've inherited and what's been given to us. Okay, Jay, Amy, Mark.
Two quick thoughts on your most recent comments and what they've stimulated. One, the whole connection to rock, of course, brings up Sur Israel, which is, yet another echo there. And
Well,
also,
just
I love
Jay, translate and explain about Sur Yisrael.
God as a rock, God as the rock of Israel.
Yeah, I love that image of God, right? I need that rock, right? We need the rock. Yeah.
So that connection, and also I'm really starting to think about dew, because dew is ephemeral, yet it is also replenishing.
Yes.
So in the best of all possible worlds, it's there, and then it kind of but then it comes back. And part of our challenge is to have it come back even yet more meaningfully.
Beautiful. Or to recognize its power, and then I feel like, or the gift that it is, and then it becomes meaningful. Okay, thank you. Amy.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
In verse 20,
Yeah.
it's and I'm reading from Onkelos. It uses words like verbs like they ate, they were full, they were satisfied, they served, they were angry. But Onkelos changes these verbs into singular and the pronouns into plural. And again, this seems to be a very important issue, because it when you hop over to 26 and talks about against you, why would God want to be a witness against you? That didn't make any sense to me. Why is this word written in the singular when it refers to the entire nation? Ibn Ezra suggests that it refers to the people as a unit.
Yeah.
Saforno writes that Moses knew that Israel would be unfaithful to God, so he had the Torah placed in the Holy of Holies, where no one could approach it except for one person, the high priest, each year, and the people will be unable to tamper with the Torah, which will bear witness that the calamities come from God. That's from Onkelos. Thank you.
Was there a question in that, Amy, or you wanted to just make that offering?
I just wanted to offer up that concept that there's sometimes these things which we would expect to be in the singular are in the plural, and sometimes things that we expect to be in the plural are in the singular, because they refer to us as individuals or us as part of a community and group.
Okay, great. And I always wonder about that, like, when does the plural, or when does the group sort of help us to take responsibility for what we've done, and when does it eclipse our sense of responsibility? Like, you kind of get, it's like, I didn't do that by myself. I did that. I mean, everyone else did it, right? So that's a really interesting point. Thank you. Okay.
What, weren't you surprised when God would be a witness against us?
We talked about that a little bit last week. I think God's really angry in the Torah. I think God's really angry at the constant abandonment. And I don't blame God. It's like, it's almost that desperation for, like, who's going to bear witness to the fact that Israel repeatedly abandoned me? I know that that's very anthropomorphic, but I'm just trying to give voice to the character of God in the Torah as I've encountered that character.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mark.
Hi, good morning, and oh goodness, I hate to sound curmudgeonly, but so this thing about not thanking God, thinking that you've done it yourself, as it were, and I mean, I agree, it's important to recognize that we are not self-made, but the thing that always curmudgeonly is when I'm watching an awards show, or if I'm watching, very rarely, a sports event, and when the winners come up, they say they thank God for the win. as though the God abandoned the other team or the other actors. And this, it makes me crazy. The way that people talk about this. And so when I see it here, it sort of activates this, because in this way, it enables people actually to not take responsibility, and to turn it over to a kind of heavenly fate. Anyway, that's me. That's my.
Yeah, I'm not getting this totally. So let me ask a couple of questions. So why does it allow people not to take responsibility? That's number one.
Because they didn't do it, God did it.
You mean the suffering part, the punishment part?
No, what I'm talking about is the people who.
Oh, I see. Because you don't take responsibility for what you've done.
Right. That God did this. I didn't do this. Right.
I see. I think there's a complicated sort of line to walk here between trust and acknowledgement of what you've been given.
Yes.
And what you can take credit for.
Yeah.
So that's number one. So you're right. And I see Jessica writing this in the chat. It's a delicate balance. Yes. So, and what's the right balance, right? What is the right balance? I think we're sort of striving to articulate that. That's number one. And it also, I think, calls us to remember our vulnerability. Like I said to my friend Sharon this morning in our study, that a sense of blessing is the opposite of entitlement. Like a sense of that the world keeps giving you gifts, and that daily due is we had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that, right? And it keeps being given as long as the climate crisis doesn't get in the way of the daily gift of due. So, I'd also say, like, God's gifts so dwarf what I've brought to myself. Like, the fact that I'm given life every day is so much bigger than anything I can bring to this world, except for maybe having children.
I mean, for me, thank God for waking up, but not necessarily for winning an Academy Award.
Yeah, but even there, you've been given so much, if not by God, then by your parents.
Yes.
So I think the Torah is lifting up a certain, like, vulnerability, trust, and gratitude. So
I'm not arguing with the Torah. I'm arguing with how it's expressed in popular.
I see. I understand now. Okay. I'll stop being the defense lawyer for the Torah. All right. So now I see that we have 4 comments. No more hands for now, because I want to go back to the text. And I'm going to ask people to really, really be brief so we can go back to the Torah. Okay. Joe, Shabbat Shalom. Joe.
Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. I just had to comment about your statement about God's anger. And I'm not good at Hebrew, but my understanding is that can also translate into a really deep hurt, because God trusts us by giving us life. And then we use that life contrary to how it should really express gratitude to God as the creator, and we don't, and it crushes his heart, because we know he's so long suffering that he continues to let us breathe, and despite our disloyalty to him. So whenever I see that word anger, I see it as is his deep hurt, and then him allowing the consequences of our choices to flow, which is not what he wants. He wants to protect us, but when we do what we want to do, he says, okay, I'm gonna let you have it, but it grieves his heart.
Joe, I'm hearing in what you're saying, the whole story of Noah. You're really, sort of, and it says there in the Parsha of Noah that God was grieved to God's heart, and God is clearly there, completely disappointed. And even though I think God's anger is God's anger, I think it's totally fair to say that there's a hurt in back of that, as we see in the Parsha of Noah. And I'll say one more thing, Joe, about this, which is, and again, Rabbi Sharon and I were talking about this morning in our chavruta, like, I keep asking, like, why would human beings articulate the story of God in this way? You know, like what about their experience, you know, has them sort of experience the divine in this way? So thank you, Joe. Okay, now next person, wait, Sir Linus.
Hi, Alice Linas. Hello,
Hi, where are you coming from?
from São Paulo.
Where?
São Paulo.
Oh wow, welcome.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I like very much your teaching. You are a very great thing. Thank you. I sorry that I don't speak English very well, but I want to comment that all the time, in many parashiyot, God is saying, you bring the covenant all the time. What the problem with God with the covenant? Of course, the covenant is always it says that it was not. What do you do to do this covenant? Because all the time he thinks that he is not well. The covenant. You understand?
So I think you're saying, I don't think I fully get the point, that we're always breaking the covenant. And what do we? And are you asking what do we need to do to fulfill the covenant?
Because the covenant, God all the time is saying, you don't do well. The covenant is not good. What's the problem with God?
I love that.
I don't know.
Yeah. So maybe God is never satisfied. That's what you're saying. Maybe the problem is with God. Who knows? That's a really good question. So we're going to look a little bit and see what would it mean? What could it possibly mean to fulfill God's covenant? It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's this terrible noise. Who's not muted? Okay, everybody mute.
Joe is not muted.
Who?
Joe.
Okay.
The noise stopped.
Beautiful silence. Thank you so much. Okay. I feel like I lost some hands, but that's okay. All right. So Paul and Nehemiah, and we're going. No more hands for now. Good.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. I have been thinking about atonement and about return. And we atone and we return, but what are we returning to? Are we returning to the same pattern, which is timeless? And the answer is yes, it's inevitable. What can we do to affect some marginal change that might be meaningful? And the answer is exposing ourselves in a deep way to criticism and hurt. And in the context of this conversation, it means giving up some of our privilege, with the understanding that privilege is in many ways finite, and whatever privilege one gives and another receives, in all likelihood, given the nature of human emotion and human need, that privilege will be used in exactly the same way that it had previously been used. And such is life. And one hopes that by making these changes, the world changes. It probably won't, but maybe a little bit.
Thank you, Paul. I love that sort of modest assessment of what change we could actually affect in the world. And, you know, I mean, the idea of tshuva is not that we return to our patterns, but that we return to God and to each other and maybe even to ourselves, you know, like remembering our own humanity and our own mortality, which is sobering and can be in itself a wake-up call. But we'll see more about, I think that the text will address what you're saying in a minute, okay, after we hear Nehemiah. But thank you.
Thank you.
Nehemiah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
I'm
Shalom.
basically doing in all your book, Azinu. I'm trying to listen to as many people, many wise people, and as many sources. And I raise my hand just to secure that I'll be able to speak it towards the end. So,
Oh, all right. So I'll call on you later. Great. Excellent. I'm going to share it. Thank you, Nehemiah. Okay, here we go. All right, so now I'm going to take you through a little bit of the pattern. I mean, there's this wonderful Rashi here. So let's do that first. So what does Rashi say about Ha'azinu Shamayim? Okay. So she'ani matra bahem b'Yisrael v'tehiyu edim b'davar shekach amarti lahem she'atem tehiyu edim. So Rashi is saying, what is this about? Calling the heavens and the earth to be witnesses. For I have told them, the Israelites, that you will be witnesses. So where did I tell them? In the last parsha. And it's here, let's see. Va'ida bam et hashamayim et haaretz. So in the introduction to Ha'azinu, in the last parsha, it says that I may speak all these words to them and that I may call heaven and earth to witness against them. So Rashi's just reminding us, I'm doing here what I said I would do. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, in terms of Rashi, and let the earth hear, v'tishma haaretz. And why did he call heaven and earth as witness against them? Moses thought, I am a being of flesh and blood, mortal, flesh and blood. Tomorrow I shall be dead, to put it plainly. If the Israelites will once say, we have never accepted the covenant, who can come and refute them? So in other words, I'm not going to be around to bear witness to this people and the covenant forever. I'm going to die. But who's not going to die? Therefore, Moses called heaven and earth as witnesses against them, or maybe for them. And this is a little bit what, who was saying that? Joe, maybe. Witnesses against them. Witnesses that endure forever. So what's eternal here in the face of this, the terrible ephemerality, is that a word? The terrible ephemeral nature of life, right? We're going to die. We're going to die. And, it's so interesting that on Yom Kippur, we are said with our practices to mimic death, to remind us of mortality, because being reminded is sort of a motivator to tshuva, right? A motivator to go back to what's sort of more permanent than what we engage in day to day. Actually, let me say that differently. What we engage in day to day can be more permanent if we connect to the eternal. And a further reason was that if they should act worthily, the witnesses might come and give them their reward. So, okay, this breaks my heart here, because it says, if the Israelites act well, then the witnesses, heaven and earth, will give them the reward. The vine may yield its fruit, the ground give its increase, the heaven bestow its due. Or if they act sinfully, the hand of the witnesses, heaven and earth, might first be against them. Right? So that's what we're seeing right now. And then here we quote, he will restrain the heaven that there be no rain, and the earth shall not give its increase, and you shall perish quickly. So, yeah, it's basically saying, if you don't act well and you don't sort of remember the covenant, then you'll have a climate crisis. That's like, in essence, right? The heavens and the earth who bear witness to who we are will reflect back to us our misdeeds. Okay. Now, so now to give you sort of an overview of this pattern, I'm just going to look at a few verses in each sort of stage of the pattern. So here it's like the story, like God's story, like God's understanding of what happened between the Israelites and God, right? God found the Israelites kind of as a child in a desert region, in an empty, howling waste. God girded them, or this child, watched over her, guarded her as the pupil of her eye. Like an eagle who rouses his nestlings, gliding down to his young, so did he spread his wings and take him, bear him along on his pinions. Not exactly sure what pinions are. If someone could help me with a word definition in the chat. The Lord alone did guide. I'm just changing up the gender so we don't get stuck on one gender here. Did guide them. No alien God at her side. She set him atop the highlands to feast on the yield of the earth. She fed him honey from the crag and oil from the flinty rock. Okay, so here's God as a parent or as a mother and as a nurturing mother who found this deserted child in the wilderness. And it's interesting because this story in different sort of renditions is told again and again by the prophets. Like God found, this kind of foundling and nurtured her and raised her, and then she grew up, became complacent and abandoned God and went to other gods. So here again, it's Jeshurun, another name of Israel, grew full and kicked. You grew big and gross and coarse, and you forsook, or they forsook the God who made him, and spurned the rock of his support. They incensed God with alien things, vexed God with abominations. So complacency here is such a key, right? Do we remember our vulnerability before the one who nurtures us? Or do we forget that one? And when we forget that one turns again. It's sort of a measure for measure thing. Like if we forget that one, then we don't have access to that one. Right? It also feels psychologically true in the sense of, if you reject the people that are closest to you, then you've sort of severed that relationship. Or you reject your parents for whatever good reasons any one of us might have, then there's something cut off to us. Okay, so and here's the tsur again, what Jay was talking about. You neglected the rock that begot you, forgot the God who brought you forth. Okay, so then from there, let's see. Oh no, that's the intertext, sorry. So then God gets very angry, right? Back to what Joe was talking about, and hides God's countenance. And we had a whole session on God hiding God's face from us and what that means. God, I don't remember if that was last week or the week before. Vayomer astira panai mehem erem ma acharitam. And they will see how they fare in the end. So when God hides God's self from us, then we experience that as punishment, right? They incensed me with no gods, vexed me with their futilities. I'll incense them with a no folk. Oh my God, what is a no folk? Let's look at 21. Vani akni'em, below with no people. I guess a sort of a negation of who we are as a people. Begoy naval, a people who are a nation of fools, right? Okay, so this is all about God's anger and punishment. And then what we have is, this is like after the song, we're told Moshe comes together with Hosea and recited all the words of this poem in the hearing of the people, like Oznei Ha'am. And Moses says to them, take to heart all the words with which I have warned you this day, and join them upon your children, that they may observe faithfully all the terms of this teaching. And here's a line I love, right? Ki lo davar reku mekem. So this is not an empty thing for you, right? It is your very life. This Torah is our very life. Ki hu chayechem Ubadavar hazeh ta'arichu yamim al ha'adamah. Through it you shall long endure on the land that you are to possess upon crossing the Jordan. So this is a troubling sort of concept. Ubadavar hazeh ta'arichu yamim al ha'adamah. So you shall lengthen your days on the earth. I've been thinking about this for a long time because it's not true that people who keep the Torah are going to live longer. We all know that, right? But there is a sense, at least for me, that in connecting to what is eternal, there's a sense of like time opening up or lengthening time, as opposed to time being shortened and feeling like you have no time and you have no life and you have no time for life. So I'm very interested in what the Torah is teaching us about the nature of time itself. Okay, so that's the overview of the pattern. Wait, there's one more point. Let's see. Okay, this is Moshe's death. We're actually not going to read this, but we end here with God telling Moshe about his death. And then, okay, we're gonna look at this poem at the end, so I'm going to open things up again and stop my share. Okay, I just want to check in with my chavruta and see if you want to add anything if you're still here. Sharon? No? Okay. Not to put you on the spot. Okay, Jay. You have to unmute.
Just a quick comment on what you just said. As a poet, I've been doing a lot of reading, and a really interesting distinction from Robert Pinsky, because we're very, very involved with meter, stress, unstressed. But he points out that duration is also a concept. So you could have something like though, which is only one aspect, just has a meter of one, but has a duration of what he calls high quantity. So similar to your last point about time exists not only in linear fashion, like 1, 2, 3, 4, but in some ways how long we can make that 1, that 2, that 3.
Amazing. I'm not sure I understand the technicality of it.
It's just that something that it and though are both one often unstressed, but one stress, but their duration is very different. It is short, though lasts longer.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so right. So what?
To your last point about time and how we look at time.
Yeah. Okay, I think I got it. Thank you, Jay. All right, Margot.
Good morning, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Margot.
About time, I want to talk more about time, as Jay just did, and I'm going to bring forth something from the chat. According to physics, according to modern physics, all time exists at once, and it's the way we experience time that seems linear. And on Shabbat, when we pause, the time stretches out, and we can see the day lengthen and tire. We simply experience it more because we're more aware of it. If we were to work all the time, that time passes, and teach us, oh God, to number our days. Right? And the other thing that Asher Chaim brought forward, and then I went with also, is that by rooting in our past, by having roots, we lengthen our days back in time, and that by influencing other generations for the good, we reach our time to lengthen into the future, and all of it's right here. So a little bit about time.
Beautiful. And the Torah is such a powerful instrument to bring the past to us, right? Our ancestors to us, and us to future generations. Beautiful. And yes, and time becomes so much bigger than our own lives. And there's such a beautiful image of death in the Torah where when the avot die, they are gathered to their, when the patriarchs die, I think not so much the matriarchs, but they are gathered unto their people.
And we're all gathered b'tzror chayim to the network of life.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Okay. Nehemiah, and we're still going to look at a poem. So Nehemiah, just remember to be brief.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom again.
Shabbat Shalom.
To the Kehillah Kedusha. I want to qualify. I always speak as if I speak against dualism of the Torah. And I want to say, the Torah is written with the wisdom, including this poem, of Chanoch Adam al pi darko. Teach a human being according to their understanding. And 99%, 99 or whatever, are in dualistic state, including myself at this moment. When we rise up, as Margot hinted, we are beyond time. And as Amy said, the one is a many, like Elohim is one and many, Chaim is one and many, Mayim, many, 5 words in Hebrew, by the way. So God is speaking here like a parent to a children because that's the state and that's the entire Torah. So in order to get to the non-dualistic, we have to meditate, to pray, and to sometimes maybe to read the scriptures that interpret the Torah, like the Kabbalah, that go beyond the pshat and the drash, beyond the meaning and the dualistic interpretation, to the remez, to the hint, to the truth that is hidden in all the words. So the Torah and the Mahabharata and all these epics are written to the public, who is always in dualistic state at least. But now I believe because it's such a hard time, more people, not myself not included yet, reach to the state of non-dualism. So there'll be more and more people, tzaddiks of our nations and of other nations.
Beautiful, thank you. So I want to pick up on one thing you said, is you're so right that the image of God here is particular to this moment of Torah. And what's amazing about Torah, and it's something that I kind of carry with me a little bit, is that like the image of God that appears really does seem to correspond to the situation that the Israelites are in. Like it responds, it addresses to, you know, the nature of the Israelites and I guess maybe who they may need or who the corrective of God should be at that moment. And I think about that like in my own life. Like I don't always need the nurturer. Sometimes I need the instructor. Sometimes I don't know if I need the punisher, but you know, it can be humbling and bracing. And I certainly get the punisher. So, you know, it's like what God is what image of God is appropriate to that moment or is almost conjured up, invoked by that moment. Okay, so I see Debbie and Jessica, and then we are going to a poem.
Rabbi Diane, the idea of Reshima, the essence, can you speak to that, the God essence? Or does anybody have that idea of Reshima? Reshima?
Reshima is to be recorded.
I understand it.
To record, but I'm not sure exactly. You're probably referring to an idea that I don't know about.
The idea of what's left behind when we, let's say, leave a room.
Yeah.
So it's that essence of the knowing of the energy that we share with one another.
What you're saying is so interesting and evocative. The residue.
I got that from Tirza Firestone.
Nice.
So I'm just something that I think within our community, somebody might have an answer for me.
So let me just say one thing that it's conjuring up in me, and then please, since I don't know about this idea, please respond in the chat. That whatever we do leaves a residue or perhaps is being recorded in some way, and that's what's left. And that seems to me works beautifully with may you be inscribed for life. Like what are we inscribing at any one moment? So that's just my riff, Debbie, okay? So maybe people in the chat are, but beautiful, I'd like to learn more about it. Okay, Jessica.
Hi, hi, Shabbat Shalom. And so I just wanted to share a tiny bit about time or
Please.
what and that I'm a little, so first of all, I'm in California and it's 3 hours early and I went through Yom Kippur 3 hours early. So the thing is, what time am I on? Am I on my time? Am I on your time, or am I on God's time? Do I break my fast when you guys break your fast, or do I wait till sundown, even though I've been up since 5:30 at services? So this idea of what, and I'm going back to what Jay Yer said about go, this idea of what are things worth. So forgive me, my camera's off because I'm having a garage sale in half an hour.
Your camera's on, Jessica, just so you should know. I see you.
Oh, and all my stuff. Sorry.
It's fine. It's all good.
Oh, so sorry.
All your Rishima.
So I'm having to decide, like, what is this worth? You know, it's worth a quarter, but it's my father's box that I remember from childhood. So is it worth $100 or 10 cents? And the idea of time, that liminal sense of time that is fluid depending. So here I am, and this is the last thing I'll say. Here I am, it's, you know, it's close to 7 a.m. and I'm supposed to not be here with you because I have so much to do. But because people are coming, you know, and buying stuff, hopefully, God willing. But I knew that Rabbi Diane, I knew that being with you and being this time spent listening to you and to this chavruta of wonderful, you know, souls would speed me up, because it would connect me in time to myself. And then I would be able to move quicker. So this fluidity and this sense of God's time.
Oh, Jessica, I'm like perfectly, like, I'm like almost tingling, because you just brought everything together in the most beautiful way. So the ephemeral nature of time and of life and death and mortality, and what is enduring and what is eternal, and the nature of time itself. So, wow, thank you. And it's a perfect bridge into the poem that we're about to read, and you'll see why in a second. And my friend Sharon is going to read the poem and add any comments she'd like to add. So, hold on a second. Okay, here's the poem. This is from Yehuda Amichai, who I often bring in, who was mostly a 20th century, I think he died in 2000, 20th century Israeli poet, who really brings the everyday and the ephemeral and lifts it to, you know, the level of the heavens and the earth and the Sor Yisrael, the rock. And yeah, it's stunning every time. So Rabbi Sharon, who I call you Rabbi Sharon, I call you Rabbi Ansfeld, I call you Sharon, so forgive me.
No, it's all good. Wow. Thank you all for these beautiful these reflections on time are swirling, and I'm also thinking about, you know, understanding